everyone, welcome to a new video here on my YouTube channel, Sam Messias. Now, normally I do reaction videos, reviews on movies, TV shows, video games, and everything fun in between. But I wanted to do something a little different, and it has to do with something a bit important in the industry when it comes to film and television that we all enjoy, we all have a good time with, and everything in between. Recently on Thursday, July 13th, the SAG union went into strike. They are now with the WGA. They are striking. They're trying to fight for their rights, not to party, but to get better pay. They're essentially trying to fight for residuals in perpetuity, trying to fight for background actors who were essentially told, hey, we want to scan your likeness one time for a one-day rate pay and never be used, and you will never be used again. Because we're going to use your image, your face, your likeness for all the other TV shows and movies from now until you die and after. And they can't do anything about it. They won't get paid after, nothing else. And let me just for and foremost say, I am no expert in this whatsoever. I have no super knowledge at all. But I am a movie fan. And this worries me a bit because, I want to see my movies in the theater, on the shows. I don't want to see that disrupted. I want those actors, I want those writers to get what they need to make sure they are compensated, to make sure they are good, to make sure everyone can eat, make sure everyone is healthy. Because we just hear that article come out saying from one of the producers, hey, let's stick this out until they get hungry. Let's stick this out until they're living on the streets. And when you hear something like that, you have to go and wow, that is pretty dark. And they come out and say, this is dark times. This is a negotiation method, which that's one way to look at it, I guess. And I think negotiations, which I have been very much paying attention to all this, it's not about the deal you want or necessarily you deserve, it's the deal you negotiate. And with negotiations, you never come out wanting what you want. And what that pretty much means is everyone goes in for what they want, no one comes out of it what they get. But they work on what they work out the details on what they can agree to. And an example, one side may want 10 people to get paid $20 million. This side might want only 8 people to get paid $20 million. Then they work it out on who gets paid how much, because they'll only be paid so much. And then from there, you go from, okay, you've come out, 7 people will get paid $10 million. That's probably the worst analogy I could probably give out, but that's the basis of a negotiation when it comes to two parties coming in, wanting two things, they clash, and they come out with a compromise. And this is really the first time since, I believe, the 1960s, in a very long time, that both the Writers and Actors Guild are both striking at the same time. This is very unprecedented. This is going to be a shock in the system to the industry altogether, and we're going to be seeing a lot of our favorite shows and movies, number one, getting shut down until everything is settled. 2, a lot of the shows on television not being put back on TV until 1, the writers are paid and getting everything they need. 2, the actors are paid and getting everything they need. And pretty much everything that we're expecting, it's going to be different. It's going to change. And when I was looking at Twitter the other day, I saw something posted by Discussing Film Twitter handle. They posted a very interesting article about how Steven Spielberg predicted how the implosion of the film industry was going to happen. And I saw that, and that really caught my eye, because he did this interview with The Hollywood Reporter back in 2013, 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And reading the article, it is insane. Reading this article is insane how Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were talking about topics about high production budgets, bombing at the box office, high movie ticket prices in 2013. And we're living at an age now where we're seeing multiple movies, not necessarily bombing, but not meeting expectations at the box office. And also at that same time, those production budgets are ballooning up to $250 million, $300 million, which is ridiculous. And also, movie tickets are skyrocketing to a ridiculous, enormous amount of rates. And they were talking about how that's going to affect the movie industry, the movie theater industry itself, because that's two different, separate animals. That's a lot of people that do not realize the exhibition industry and the movie theater and the movie making industry are two separate things. Working at a movie theater myself back in my days, I understand that. And I wanted to do this video just to go through this article kind of by bullet point and just read what Spielberg and Lucas was saying back then. And you guys can join me and see what they were saying. So Spielberg predicts the implosion of the film industry. Pretty self-explanatory way of opening up an article. He was doing this, him and George Lucas, at a USC School of Cinema Arts building, which I'm assuming it was probably a seminar or probably an event tour. Steven Spielberg on Wednesday predicted an implosion in the film industry is inevitable, whereby half a dozen or so $250 million movies flop at the box office and alter the industry forever. What comes next, or even then, will be price variance at the movie theaters, where you're gonna have to pay $25 for the next Iron Man. You're going to have to pay $7 to see Lincoln. He also said that Lincoln was this close to be put on HBO back then instead of the theaters. And that's amazing to think. Even back then, studios were just like, was this movie even gonna make us money? And they were gonna dump Lincoln on HBO, a Daniel Day-Lewis starred movie directed by Steven Spielberg. And they were just gonna dump it on HBO. That's insane in and of itself. And right from the jump, he said we're gonna see about half a dozen or so $250 million movies bombing or flopping at the box office. Now, when he said that, I went in and did my little research. I went into a website called the-numbers.com. It's a website that, if you're looking for production on movie budgets, it's one of the better sites to look, because they do a really good job on tracking how much movies are made and just pulling up how much each movie production budget is valued and everything like that. I decided to do a little thing right here, and these are just the movies that came out this year. Probably can't see it on your side, so I'm gonna just read it out to you guys. So this is the movies that had high production budgets this year alone. We got Fast X, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Little Mermaid, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Elemental, The Flash, Transformers: Rise of the Beast. Now, I'm not saying whether these movies are good or bad or anything like that. This is not what this video is about. This is not what this discussion is about. What this discussion and video is about is how the production budget has ballooned to a ridiculous amount and then causing the return and not seeing what they're putting out. So let's start with Fast X. Fast X cost $340 million. Why is a movie like Fast X costing $340 million? That's ridiculous. Domestically, it only made $145. If we're only going by domestic numbers, that is a bomb. It did not make its money back whatsoever at all. Now we're looking at worldwide gross. It made $723 million. I don't even think that's even breaking even for that movie, to be totally honest, because it's $340, and this is the website, they base it before marketing. These are all budgets before marketing, so who knows how much they put in for Fast X before the marketing. It could be close to $400 million, and they didn't even break even on that. That is ridiculous. What is also ridiculous is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny costing $300 million. Now, I love Harrison Ford. I love the character Indiana Jones. It was a fun movie. It was a great time. But why is a movie like that costing $300 million? That is unheard of. You go back to the last Indiana Jones, not the last one, probably if you go to Raiders of the Lost Ark, maybe, that movie probably cost $20 to $30 million to make, and that movie probably made close to $500 million at the box office. And just from those numbers to now, that is a massive success, big time success, to now where it can't even break even. Because so far, these are numbers so far. This video is not based on what happens this box office weekend, the weekend of July 14th through July 16th. So far, domestically, it has made a little over $136 million. Again, it's on a budget of $300 million. The if we stop it now, it still hasn't made any money. Put the whole worldwide gross, it still hasn't made any money. It's still not a profitable movie because worldwide it only made $263 million worldwide. We're a month in on this movie. Next week's going to be a month of this movie in theaters, and it still hasn't even crossed 300 million at the box office. It has not made back its money, its production money. And again, we're not counting its marketing money, its marketing budget. So who knows, again, who knows how much extra? That's always that extra that no one knows. Let's go to the next. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Again, movie I loved, I appreciate it. It was such a fun time. I cried for sure watching it. Cost $250 million. That's another problem that Marvel is going through. All their movies costing more than $200 million to make. But then again, at the same time, Bob Iger thinks their actors and writers are asking for too much. But yeah, they put out numbers like this. That makes sense. That movie, Guardians 3, cost $250 million to make. Production budget $250 million. Its domestic gross was $358 million. That's, you know what, that's really good, pretty impressive. And its overall worldwide gross was $839 million. Now, they got lucky on that one. They got pretty lucky on that one. Most of the time, the Guardians movies don't really hit $1 billion. I think 800 is probably the average that they usually hit, 800 to 900. I know when it first came out, I was like, oh, everyone should be worried because it only made 100 million, 115. It's like, it made 115. Again, opening weekend is very different from what that final product will be for box office. And you know what? I believe it's still in theaters. I know it just came out on digital. A movie making $839 million on a $250 million budget. It made profit. It made money, but not the return they would see if the movie was $100 million movie. If it was 50 to 100 million, that $839 alone would have been more. Would have been massive. But because it is what it is, and I know you can see the theme here is Disney. A lot of Disney is putting out a lot of crap. And I'm not bagging on Disney. Oh, Disney's evil. They make no good movies. They make a lot of good movies. They have a lot of good product. Unfortunately, they put too much into production that doesn't see the return, in which we don't see any more of the good product. We see a lot of the crap product. Sometimes. Up next is The Little Mermaid, costing $250 million to make. Domestically, it made $292. Now, normally when a movie costs $250 million, the return comes back at $290. When something like that happens, that's not a profit because you're not adding the marketing budget. And that, you're not breaking even. Because what it means by breaking even is you have to make a production budget plus what that is. Domestic box office didn't help them. Worldwide so far, $545 million. Now, Little Mermaid was struggling a little bit. It was not doing so hot at first, but it was slowly making its money in the month of June in the other markets around the world. So it kind of saved them. I think if this movie makes that extra 20 to 30 million, that would get them to break even. So they wouldn't lose money, they wouldn't make money. Breaks even. Up next, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Another movie that Marvel put a lot of investment in, $200 million. And this was all before the Jonathan Major issues. We're not gonna get into that right now because that's in and of itself a monster of a topic to get into. But a movie that cost $200 million to make, domestic gross made $214 million. A movie that makes that much in its domestic, you're not seeing that return. That's not really good at all whatsoever. Worldwide, it only made $463 million. It did not cross $500 million. Now, if that movie would have made $500 million, okay, you made a profit. Now, not to say this movie didn't make a profit, but not as much as they were expecting. Not as much as they were hoping. And especially for a Marvel movie, for an Ant-Man movie, that probably should have done a lot better. As much as they were hyping this up to be a Captain America Winter Soldier style movie that's going to be important setting up of the multiverse saga. This was supposed to be the thing that answers all the questions with Kang and this and that, and came out with more questions as to why we got this movie. Up next, we're going to be talking about Elemental. Now, Elemental, again, one of the better movies that came out this year. I loved it. I enjoyed it. It tells a great immigrant story that was poorly promoted. That was probably one of the worst marketing movies I've ever seen, because what they marketed for this movie was nothing but what you see. Two totally different things. It was literally night and day. night and day. The movie cost $200 million. Domestically, it made $119. This movie has been struggling here stateside, but making $119 million on the $200 million budget so far, again, that's good. I know you're probably wondering, but you're saying this and that. It's a little bit different. Going into the numbers, looking it up, it didn't put a lot into marketing, which you can see why the marketing for this movie was so counter to what the product was. And so when its overall production worldwide, the total gross is $261 million. So $261 million worldwide to $200 million production. For animation, it is a little different. There is some curves a lot of studios take into effect. So 261 for 200 million. That is a little bit better than what Lightyear did last year, where it was another $200 million movie that only made 219 worldwide. You have to consider how much marketing was put in. I can't imagine a lot of marketing was put in, and it's still making money in the movie, in the box office. It's still continuing its run. So we'll see from there how much Elemental will make at the end. Up next, oh boy, it's The Flash. That anomaly that no one thought was ever gonna see the light of day. Thanks to Ezra Miller and their theatrics all around the world. Not gonna get into it right now. There are articles out there that tells you much more than I could, explaining everything that they got into. If you want to learn more, go read it. We're not gonna talk about that. We're talking about the movie itself. Movie itself, I thought, it was pretty good. Was it the greatest comic movie of all time? No. Was it a top 5? It would have made it could have a good contendership for top 5. CGI. Here's the thing with the CGI. I first saw this movie 2 weeks before it came out, and they definitively said this is not the final product. The movie is not done. So when seeing the CGI, I thought, okay, well, if they're not done, they'll fix it. They got 2 weeks, it's cool. 2 weeks later, saw the movie in theaters, exactly the same. And boy, oh boy, that CG is rough. And the excuse that Andy Muschietti came out with, saying, oh, it's the perspective of the Flash, and then the Speed Force and this and that. Oh, that is some bull-honking bullshit that you're putting out there, my friend. That is, I love you as a director. You make great product, great work. That is some BS right there that you're spinning. Appreciate your spinning, but BS. Its production is $200 million. The Flash has only made $263, and we're coming up on 2 months on this movie being in theaters. It only made $263 on a budget of $200. We're not counting the marketing. They marketed the hell out of this movie. They marketed this movie so hard not to show Ezra Miller doing any press. You have to think and wonder, was it really worth it not putting Batgirl out and keeping this one in? And I know the whole thing with the tax write-off, you can't tax write-off this movie because of how much they put in, this and this, and blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of legal malarkey that I don't understand. I know a lot of people try to explain it on the internet. I appreciate their work. So just the average moviegoer, sometimes in the bubble, sometimes out of the bubble. I think The Flash, at the end of the day, they've been saying it's gonna go down as one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. It's looking like Wild Wild West sort of territory if it's continuing its go as it is right now. So yeah, it's in that Will Smith Wild Wild West territory when it comes to being a bomb box office. Last on the summer movie box office so far this season is Transformers Rise of the Beast. Had a production budget of $195 million, not $200 million like the other movies were, but $195, still an average movie should have been. Its domestic gross is $150 million. That's not great, obviously. Worldwide so far, and it's made $400 million. Now, I think Bumblebee was made a lot less than $195, probably hovering a little over $100, between $100 and $150. I'm guessing, and not off the top of my head, I'm not seeing the numbers in front of me, but making $400 so far worldwide for a production of $195, you're kind of seeing profit. Not a lot, but you're seeing profit on that. And I wanted to do this and bring this up because Spielberg said you're going to see at least half a dozen of movies that are made for $250 million or more flop at the box office. And that's going to alter the film industry. And we're kind of seeing that now with all the strikes that are happening and all the producers who are coming out and saying everyone that's coming out asking for this, asking for that, they're being inconsiderate, they're being unrealistic, and they're just being unreasonable when it comes to being paid because everything is so scarce. While at the same time, all these producers are getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars, like hand over fist, like really, come on. So you can get paid $100 to $400 million, all these producers, but all the writers who make all the great movies that go gangbusters, they can barely afford rent. makes sense. Back to this article here, we go to what George Lucas said in that same event at USC. And George Lucas agreed that the massive changes are afoot, including the film exhibition morphing somewhat into a Broadway play model, whereby fewer movies are released, they stay in theaters for a year, and ticket prices are much higher. His prediction prompted Spielberg to recall that his 1982 film, E.T., stayed in theaters for a year and 4 months. That is another thing that is not being mentioned a lot, that movies nowadays are being taken out of theaters way too fast. As soon as that it's not making money, they take it out and they put it on streaming and it stop making money in the box office and they stop seeing the return. Case in point, you see right here, Spielberg says that in 1982, E.T. was in theaters for a year and 4 months. That's almost a year and a half that he kept E.T. in theaters. Whereas to Fast X, it came out, didn't make as much money as I thought it would in the first few weeks. Universal decided, oh, let's put it out on streaming. Less than a month. I want to say less than a month. I could be wrong about that. It was pretty quick. A few years back when they decided to shorten the theatrical window to streaming day from 90 days to 45 days, that also killed the box office because now all these studios just saw that as, oh, we can't make this much money, dump it on streaming. And we see movies like Top Gun Maverick last year, it was just making money after money after money after money because it was in the theaters for so long. It stayed in theaters for almost 6 to 7 months before ever getting into streaming, before ever getting to Paramount Plus. And Tom Cruise fought tooth and nail with Paramount to make sure that didn't ever get close to doing a premiere to date, to do a day to date for Top Gun Maverick, because he knew that that movie will bring people back to the theaters, and it did. Spielberg said it himself. He saved the movie theater industry's ass at that time. Funny how things changes in the year, right? Continuing on this article, the two legendary filmmakers, along with the CNBC anchor at that time, Julia Bornstein, and Microsoft president at that time, the interactive entertainment business, Don Matrick, I believe. Yeah, Don Matrick. We're speaking at the USCA as part of the festival surrounding the official opening of the interactive media building, 3 stories high and part of the USC School of Cinematic Arts. Lucas and Spielberg told USC students that they are learning about the industry at an extraordinary time of upheaval, where even proven talents find it difficult to get movies into theaters. Some ideas from young filmmakers are too fringy for the movies. Spielberg said that's the big danger, and there's eventually going to be an implosion or a big meltdown. There's going to be an implosion where 3 or 4 or maybe even half a dozen mega budget movies are going to go crashing into the ground, and that's going to change the game, basically. In any case, Spielberg is right. He is 100% right, and this was back in 2013. He was talking about this where before the pandemic even happened, before theaters were shut down for a year and 6 months. I think that kind of sounds right, maybe a little more. And what he said right there, we're gonna get 3 or 4 or maybe even half a dozen. We already got 4 like that already. We got 4 like that this summer. That cost $2 to $250 million. Correction, $2 to $300 million. Correction, $2 to $400 million budgets, and most of them have crashed and burned at the box office, and that does cause an implosion. We're seeing that now. I think that was the catalyst of the strike, what we're seeing now. One of the major catalysts. And it's really insane how Spielberg was talking about this 10 years ago. 10 years ago, him and George Lucas were talking about this, and no one was none the wiser. No one just like, oh, okay, they just brushed it off. No one gave it another thought. And another thing about this article is that some ideas from young filmmakers are looked at as too fringy. Too fringy. What does that really mean? Here's what it means. They don't want to take a risk on something they don't know. Something that's not IP, something that's not a known entity. So put this in perspective. Warner Brothers would rather do a new Batman movie because that's a known IP, a known property. rather than say Ryan Coogler comes to them with a new project, a story that they don't really know about, but here you go. His script, his story, he's directing. Here, what is Warner Brothers gonna do? Take a gamble on Ryan Coogler? At that time, this is before him at Fruitvale Station, Creed, and Black Panther. Will they do that, or will they give all their money to a Batman production? They're gonna go with a Batman production, and from there, who knows if that Batman production will be a critical box office hit. It hits all the criteria. Who knows? We don't know. We don't live in that world. And that one Ryan Coogler movie will never see the light of day because it's too fringy. It's too risky. The story that was told didn't make sense for Warner Brothers to make. And continuing on in this article, Lucas laminated the high cost of marketing movies and the urge to make them for the masses while ignoring niche audiences. He called cable television much more adventurous than film nowadays. That is important. What he just said right there, the high cost of marketing movies and the urge to make them for the masses. Again, he's saying this in 2013, 10 years ago, and no one saw this. No one think to give George Lucas and Steven Spielberg the time of day to think, these guys, visionaries in the filmmaking industry, maybe we should probably pay attention to what they're saying. Maybe we should probably learn a little bit more on what they were talking about 10 years ago. Because we're seeing that now. We're seeing that in movie theaters, we're seeing it in our movies, we're seeing it in production, and especially in the marketing, because some movies are getting so overly marketed. And depending on where you live, some more than others are just getting flooded with commercials, with billboards, with merchandise. It's insane. And he also said this, cable television. At that time, 2013, cable TV was huge. It was big. That was it. That was streaming TV back then. Streaming television now, how big and important it was, that was cable. That was HBO. Showtime, yeah, Stars, Cinemax, FX, TBS sometimes, TNT, yeah, sometimes. But those shows were, like I said, adventurous. They were interesting. There were new stories. They were taking risks. And nowadays, you don't see that anymore because they've moved from cable to stream. And again, you can't really base your parameters on streaming because they don't give away their numbers because they like to hide them. And continuing on this article, he said, I think eventually the Lincolns will go away and they're going to be on television, Lucas said. As mine almost was, Spielberg interjected, it was this close as HBO, this close. Like he said, it's insane to think how a movie like Lincoln was going to be put on HBO. And that was just the idiotic way of thinking that Warner Brothers had in its previous ownership for the AT&T bought them. And continuing on this article, we're talking about the Lincoln and Red Tails. We barely got them into theaters. We're talking about Steven Spielberg and George Lucas can't get their movie into a theater, Lucas said. I've got more people into Lincoln than you got into Red Tails, Spielberg joke. Only they can jab at each other like that because, they're buddies. They literally build the industry off their backs. With the technology, cameras, lighting, sound, editing, etc. They all go to Skywalker Ranch. And again, that makes perfect sense. Why are the movies like Lincoln, the Red Tails, those kind of movies are getting swept under the rug? It's insane. That is a point that they were making in 2013 that we are ignoring now. And we're seeing it suffer. We're seeing Bob Iger coming out and making, we're seeing our product being diluted. We're seeing our product being this and that. Well, okay, you see it, but you kind of caused it at the same time, allowing guys like Bob Chapek to do what they did and just gutted everything that you did before you left and were in the state that you're in. And not just in Disney. This is happening in Universal. This is happening in Paramount. This is happening in Sony. Is kind of stayed out of it just because they don't have a streaming service, which they're looking at it as, thank God we didn't do that. Because every other studio that decided to do that, they are paying for it in handsful because it costing them so much money just to keep those streaming services in business. They wish they didn't do it. But they're in the state they're in now because everyone thought, Netflix can do it, we can do it too, even better. Day one. No, you can't, dummies, because guess what? You're not making a profit off that in day one. Which they can come out and say, we knew we weren't, which I call bullshit on because all those studio execs who came out with their new streaming service, the Paramount Pluses, the Peacocks, the Disney Plus, they all thought day one they take that money back day one and be the new Netflix and put them out of business and see look where they're at. They're taking movies and shows off their platform to save money. And then again, we're still coming out of the pandemic. We're still trying to figure things out when it comes to AI, things like that. It's a weird time in the industry that we're living in. It's crazy. Continuing on this article, Spielberg added on that he had to co-own his own studio in order to get Lincoln into theaters. The pathway to getting into theaters is really getting smaller and smaller, Lucas said. Which I think that is 100% accurate, because some movies nowadays, if they don't have that big name behind it, how do they get into the theaters? How do they see it the light of day? Take this for example, Joyride. Hilarious movie that no one saw. Joyride was produced by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. How did it get put in the theaters? Well, it was produced by them. They probably got their names in the door, their footsteps in the door. Sony didn't put the money into producing that movie. They put the money into something else. Again, marketing. Where is the line when it comes to marketing? Where is the priorities when it comes to movies and theaters, when it comes to marketing? Are you pretty much prioritizing one movie over the other, or is all your movies important? Continuing on, Mantrick and Spielberg also praised Netflix, prompting Bernstein to ask Spielberg if he planned to make original content for the internet stream. I have nothing to announce, said the director. Yeah, he ain't going to Netflix. Let's just put that to bed. How about that? Again, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Netflix was a much different monster than it is now. What I mean by monster is not, well, in both senses, because let's be honest, they're doing a lot of shit over there. But Netflix right now, when it comes to their movies, they're not producing what they're producing. What they're doing is putting, again, they're making movies from $200 to $300 million, but they're not putting it in theaters. They're not marketing the movie, so they're not seeing any return. They're just expecting the subscribers to subscribe and add on and this and that, and that's not seeing any production. And since we're not seeing how many people are watching it specifically, a lot of the writers, a lot of the background actors, a lot of the people who put all their work into those movies don't get a lot of residuals, don't see a lot of the money back from that. And that's what they're fighting for right now. That's what they're fighting for over in Hollywood. All those people trying to get honest living, trying to get their health care. That's what they're fighting. That's what all those studios execs are trying to take away from them. Sad but true. Alright, we're gonna end this article here with Lucas and Spielberg also spoke of the vast differences between filmmaking and video games, because the latter hasn't been able to tell stories and make consumers care about the characters, which isn't to say that two worlds aren't connected. Spielberg in fact has teamed with Microsoft to make a TV show for Xbox 360 on the game Halo. And he is making a movie based on the Electronic Arts game Need for Speed. That is true. The movie came out. It was okay. Not the best movie, I would say, in Halo. Less said about it, the better, let's be honest. That part was mostly about the video game side, which I don't believe 100% the strike is going to affect video games, because that's a different entity. Could be wrong about that. Don't quote me on that. Don't take my word forward on that. Let's just say what it is. But pretty much what this article was entailing, 10 years ago, Spielberg and George Lucas, they said, hey, if we see more than 3 movies bomb in the box office that costs $250 million to make, then things are going to change. It's going to implode. We're seeing that now. It is scary how accurate this was. When it comes to movies that were supposed to be going into theaters and literally dumping it on, at that time, a cable network instead of putting it in theaters. And that was the solution back then. Dumping movies like Lincoln on cable instead of putting it in theaters. How crazy that would have been. I am not an expert on this. I am not a 100% person when it comes to the ins and outs on all these labor unions, the numbers on what the actors guild are asking, what the producers are wanting, what the writers are looking for as well. I just saw this article. I wanted to make this video, put my 2 cents out there, and just because I thought it was so interesting how, again, Spielberg saw this. He saw this happening, and no one saw this. No one gave him a thought. And it's Steven Spielberg. Why are we not taking his word to home when it comes to the film industry? Anything this man says, we should take notes when it comes to making movies, creating stories, what's going to be happening in the film industry, both movie theater wise and making it. Because he told Tom Cruise, you saved our asses. Because Top Gun Maverick was not put in the theater, safe to say, movie theaters would slowly be dying. That is a hard fact. And that's even with Spider-Man No Way Home coming before that and making almost $2 billion. Because that's another niche audience that Lucas was talking about in this article. They're not going into all of the audiences. They're going to niche audiences that they could get that repeat viewings, but after that, they're not seeing the money back. And honestly, guys, at the end of the day, I'm in 100% support of all those actors who are in SAG, all the writers who are in WGA. You guys are fighting the good fight. I 100% support you. If you watch this video, I hope you do. If I sound like a complete idiot, I am sorry. I tried my best. If you enjoyed this video and appreciate my effort in this, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys keep fighting the good fight, keep picketing, fight for your rights. Don't let these guys take you down. Make sure everyone can get paid, everyone can get the healthcare that they need. Don't let the AI take over. Once that does, it's over. And I know, machines are taking over a lot of things. That's the way of life. That's been happening in smaller markets, in supermarkets and here and there, everywhere. But when studio execs start saying things like, "Oh, let's bleed these writers dry. Let's make sure they're homeless. Let's make sure their families are starving." I think that's a different thing. That's a human. That's, I think, where you lose a lot of your guff. And again, you writers too, keep fighting. Don't settle for anything less than we deserve, because a lot of these stories that these producers like to put out and brag and say how great they are, they wouldn't be made without you either. And I'm in support of all you guys. Keep fighting that good fight. Keep rocking. Keep rolling. Don't give up. You guys are rocking. You guys are amazing. If you guys like what I did here and you'd like to see more videos like this, me talking about the film industry or anything like this, anything regarding any topic whatsoever, please let me know. I would like to look into it, discuss it, and go into further detail about it. That'll be interesting. I want to be informative. I want to learn. I enjoy this. I like this. I want to do more. If you guys are interested, please let me know. I would like to do more. Make sure you guys like this video make sure you guys like this video below. Click that like button, subscribe, and make sure you follow me on all my social medias in the description below. All will be under there as well. And guys, and until next time, bye.